My blood splattered the floor as my mother's ring sliced my face. "Ungrateful brat," she hissed, demanding money for my sister again. My daughter's terrified scream pierced my soul as Dad pinned me against the wall. 30 years of abuse crystallized in that moment. They had no idea what I'd secretly done 3 months ago. I'd let them stay in my home, appearing to forgive them while executing my carefully crafted plan. The moment her ring connected with my cheek, I knew this would be the last time they'd ever hurt me. Justice was coming, and I had orchestrated every detail. The blood dripped onto my cream kitchen tiles as I pressed my palm against my cheek. My 6-year-old daughter Lily cowered behind the counter, her small body trembling as she watched her grandparents attack her mother. My father Scott's grip on my shoulders tightened as he shoved me harder against the wall. "You've always been selfish," he growled, his face inches from mine. "After everything we've done for you, Heather needs that money for her treatment. $25,000 is nothing to someone like you." My mother Brenda stood beside him, her diamond ring now stained with my blood. "Your sister is trying to get better, and you won't even help. What kind of person refuses to help their own family?" The irony of her words made me want to laugh and cry simultaneously. Family. They had never treated me like family. I was their ATM, their emotional punching bag, their disappointment. Heather was the golden child who could do no wrong even when she repeatedly landed in expensive rehab facilities. 15 years ago, I'd escaped their control. I'd built a life for myself as a financial advisor, created a home for my daughter after divorcing Jackson 2 years ago, and established boundaries with my toxic parents. Or so I thought. 3 months ago, they had shown up on my doorstep with luggage and tears. They'd lost their home due to gambling debts and Heather's expensive rehab bills. They had nowhere to go. Despite our history, despite every instinct screaming at me to turn them away, I had reluctantly agreed to let them stay temporarily in my guest house. "You can stay for a month while you figure things out," I'd told them against my better judgment. That month had stretched to 3 with constant demands for money, criticism of my parenting, and subtle undermining of my authority with Lily. I should have known better. People like my parents never change. The assault happened when I finally said no to their latest demand. $25,000 for a luxury rehab facility for Heather. A facility with spa treatments and private rooms that insurance wouldn't cover because it wasn't medically necessary. "Lily, go to your room, sweetheart," I managed to say calmly despite the blood trickling down my neck. "Don't you dare dismiss her," my mother snapped. "She needs to see what happens when you disrespect your parents. Maybe she'll learn better than you did." My father finally released me, and I slid down the wall, my legs suddenly unable to support my weight. Through the haze of pain and shock, a strange clarity emerged. This moment, this violent explosion was actually perfect. It was exactly what I needed. I took a deep breath and looked up at my parents with tears in my eyes. But these weren't tears of pain or fear. They were tears of anticipation. "I'm sorry," I whispered, my voice breaking. "You're right. Family should come first. I'll get the money for Heather." The sudden shift in my demeanor caught them off guard. My father's fist, which had been raised for another blow, slowly lowered. "Well," my mother said, smoothing her shirt as if nothing had happened, "it's about time you showed some respect. You can stay longer," I added, my eyes downcast in apparent submission, "until things stabilize. I know how hard it's been for you." They exchanged triumphant glances, believing they had broken me. Again, they had no idea that I had been planning this moment since the day they arrived. The cameras hidden throughout my house and guest house had captured everything. The verbal abuse, the theft of my documents, and now, physical assault in front of my child. They believed they were winning, but the game had only just begun. That night, after putting Lily to bed with extra stories and reassurances that she was safe, I sat in my bathroom examining the cut on my cheek. It wasn't deep enough to need stitches, but it would leave a mark for a while. Just one more scar to add to my collection, though most of mine weren't visible. As I cleaned the wound, memories flooded back, a lifetime of similar moments when I wasn't good enough, didn't give enough, wasn't like Heather enough. I was 17 when they told me I wouldn't be going to college, despite the full scholarship I'd earned to Northwestern University. "Heather needs you to help with her modeling career," my mother had explained, as if it were the most reasonable thing in the world. "She has a real future, Darcy. She could make millions." You're just good at books and numbers. Anyone can do that. So instead of pursuing my dreams, I got a job as a receptionist at a financial firm to help pay for Heather's modeling, photos, coaching sessions, and travel expenses. My parents took every cent I earned and told me I was selfish when I asked to keep even a small amount for myself. But something unexpected happened during those years of sacrifice. I discovered I had a gift for financial analysis. The advisors at the firm noticed how quickly I learned how intuitively I understood market patterns. While my parents thought I was just answering phones, I was absorbing everything, studying for certifications at night, and slowly building my credentials. By 20, I had my first securities license. By 25, I was a full advisor with my own clients. All while my parents believed I was still just the help at the firm, funneling my income to support Heather's increasingly expensive lifestyle and addiction issues. The next morning, I made breakfast for everyone as usual. My parents came in from the guest house acting as if nothing had happened the day before. No acknowledgement of the now bandaged cut on my face or Lily's unusual quietness. "We need to talk about Heather's treatment options," my mother said, helping herself to the pancakes I'd made. "The facility needs a deposit by Friday." "Of course," I said with a manufactured smile. "I've been looking into it. I'll make some calls today." My father grunted with approval, not bothering to look up from his plate. When Lily left for school and my parents went to run errands, which usually meant shopping with my credit card, I went to my home office and pulled out the small digital recorder I'd been carrying in my pocket. I transferred yesterday's recording to my secure cloud storage, another piece of evidence added to my growing collection. For the past 3 months, I'd been documenting everything. The verbal abuse, the manipulation, the lies they told my friends and neighbors about helping their poor, unstable daughter through a difficult time. She's always been emotionally fragile, I'd overheard my mother telling my neighbor Sue. After the divorce, we had to step in. She can barely take care of Lily on her own. I'd also installed cameras in the common areas of my home and the guest house with legal disclaimers posted as required by state law disguised as security system notices. These cameras had captured my parents systematically going through my files when they thought I wasn't home, copying down client information, account numbers, and my personal financial details. But yesterday, while reviewing footage, I'd discovered something that made my blood run cold. My father had used my office computer to access my bank accounts. He had my passwords, probably from the password notebook I deliberately left visible with slightly altered credentials. He'd transferred $5,000 to an account I didn't recognize. Instead of confronting them, I added this to my evidence file. Each transgression was another nail in the coffin I was building for them. Not a literal coffin, of course. I wasn't going to hurt them physically. I was going to destroy them legally, financially, and socially, just as they had tried to do to me for 35 years. That afternoon, I created a new safety system with Lily. We sat on her bed, surrounded by her stuffed animals, as I explained. "Sweetheart, if you ever feel scared or uncomfortable around Grandma and Grandpa or anyone else, I want you to use our special code word." Her big blue eyes looked up at me with complete trust. "What's the code word, Mommy?" "Butterscotch," I said, choosing her favorite ice cream flavor. "If you say butterscotch, I'll know you need me right away and I'll make sure you're safe." "Can you remember that?" She nodded solemnly. "Butterscotch means I'm scared." "That's right," I said, pulling her into a hug. "And you never have to be around anyone who scares you, not even family. Especially not family." Later that day, I checked the hidden camera in my home office and watched as my mother rifled through my client files, taking photos of documents with her phone. My father stood guard at the door. Their actions were so bold, so entitled, that it momentarily took my breath away. But instead of fear, I felt a strange sense of power. Every illegal action they took strengthened my case against them, and they had no idea they were being recorded. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Trevor, my most trusted colleague at the firm. "They've done it again," he said without preamble. "Your parents just called pretending to be you, trying to get access to your client management system. Said they forgot the password." And I asked already, knowing the answer. Followed the protocol we discussed. Denied access, documented the attempt, added it to the file. "Thank you," I said, genuine gratitude in my voice. Trevor had been my ally since I first told him about my plan 3 months ago. He was helping me secure my professional accounts while gathering evidence of my parents' attempts at financial fraud. "How much longer are you going to let this go on, Darcy?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. Not much longer, I replied, touching the bandage on my cheek. They've given me exactly what I needed. Now it's just a matter of timing. What my parents didn't know was that I wasn't just gathering evidence of their current misdeeds. I was building a case that would expose decades of abuse, fraud, and manipulation. And I was just getting started. The following day, I drove to Peaceful Pines Recovery Center to visit Heather. My parents believed I was going to discuss payment options for her transfer to the luxury facility they wanted. In reality, I hadn't seen my sister in over a year, and I needed answers only she could provide. The facility was clean but modest. Nothing like the resort-style center my parents were demanding. A staff member led me to a small garden where Heather sat on a bench, looking healthier than I'd seen her in years. When she saw me, her eyes widened at the bandage on my face. "Darcy, what happened to you?" I sat beside her, suddenly unsure how to begin. Heather and I had never been close. Our parents had made sure of that by constantly pitting us against each other. But something in her eyes seemed different now. Clearer. More present. "Mom and Dad happened," I said simply. She closed her eyes briefly, pain crossing her features. "They're staying with you, aren't they?" They said they were going to ask. "For 3 months now." She shook her head. "I told them not to involve you again. I told them I was done with their schemes." Schemes, I echoed, my interest piqued. Heather looked around to ensure we were alone, then leaned closer. "You don't know the half of it, Darcy. They've been stealing my insurance money for years. Every policy payment that was supposed to cover my treatment, they forged my signature and took it." "How do you know this?" "The insurance investigator showed up here 2 months ago. Apparently they've filed claims totaling over $200,000 for treatments I never received. They've been pocketing the money while putting me in state-funded programs." My mind raced with this new information. "Do you have any documentation of this?" Heather reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded paper. "The investigator left me his card. He said there's an ongoing investigation." I took the card, another piece falling into place. "Heather, this isn't just about the insurance fraud, is it? There's more." She laughed bitterly. "So much more. They've been running cons for as long as I can remember. Remember Mrs. Abernathy, their elderly neighbor. They convinced her to put them in her will, then helped her manage her medications until she died 3 years ago. And Mr. Peterson from Dad's bowling league invested his entire retirement in Dad's fake business venture, lost everything." As Heather spoke, memories surfaced: hushed phone calls, mysterious cash deposits, elderly friends who suddenly changed their wills or gave my parents gifts. I'd been too young to understand then, too busy surviving to question. "There's something else you should know," Heather said, her voice dropping. "Remember Grandpa's trust fund for you, the one they said didn't exist. My grandfather had died when I was 16. There had always been whispers that he'd left me a small trust, but my parents insisted it was just family rumor. It was real," Heather confirmed. $50,000 for your education. They forged your signature when you turned 18 and took every penny. That's what paid for our house renovation, not Dad's bonus, like they claimed. I felt a cold fury building inside me. Not just for the money they'd stolen from me, but for the opportunities, the freedom it represented. That trust could have been my escape years earlier. "There's one more thing you should know," Heather said, looking directly into my eyes. "They're not broke, Darcy. The house, the gambling debts, it's all a lie." "What do you mean?" "They have money hidden in offshore accounts. Lots of it. The financial troubles are just their way of gaining sympathy and access to your life, your client list, your money." She gripped my hand tightly. "They're using you to increase their wealth while appearing destitute. It's their favorite con." I sat back processing this revelation. The pieces were falling into place. My parents weren't desperate, they were predators. And they'd selected me as their next victim, counting on my guilt and familial obligation to give them access to not just my money, but my wealthy clients. "Why are you telling me all this now?" I asked, still wary of this newfound alliance with my sister. "Because I'm clean now. Really clean, not just pretending." Her eyes filled with tears. "And because I'm sorry, Darcy. I'm so sorry for my part in what they did to you. They pitted us against each other our whole lives, and I let them. I took everything while you got nothing, and I never stood up for you. I wanted to believe her, but years of manipulation made trust difficult. If you're really sorry, would you be willing to make a statement officially? She nodded without hesitation. I've already been working with the insurance investigator. I'll help you however I can. As I drove home, my mind was spinning with this new information. My parents weren't just abusive, they were criminal, and they had targeted me for their biggest con yet. That evening, I put my expanded knowledge to use. I'd invited several of my wealthiest clients to a dinner party, and made sure my parents would be there. I watched with newly informed eyes as they worked the room, charming and attentive, collecting business cards and making connections. Your father is delightful, said Eleanor Thompson, a widow with a 7-figure portfolio. He offered to look at my roof this weekend. Isn't that thoughtful? I smiled tightly. Very thoughtful. Though he's not actually a roofer. Oh, he said he used to own a construction company before retirement. Said he'd give me a good deal on repairs. Alarm bells rang in my head. This was their method. Identify vulnerable wealthy targets, establish trust, then exploit it financially. Later, I overheard my father telling another client about an exclusive investment opportunity, while my mother admired the expensive art in my dining room, asking pointed questions about insurance values and security systems. They were setting up their next victims right in my home, using my reputation and client relationships as their entry point. The audacity was breathtaking. As I cleared dessert plates, my mother cornered me in the kitchen. That Thompson woman is loaded, she whispered excitedly. Your father's going to give her an estimate triple what a roof repair should cost. She'll never know the difference. And are you actually going to repair her roof? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. She waved dismissively. We'll send some guys to patch the visible spots. She's 82, Darcy. She won't be climbing up to check the work. The casualness with which she discussed defrauding an elderly woman, my client, who trusted me with her life savings, made me physically ill. But I maintained my facade of complicity, nodding as if I understood. My plan was accelerating faster than I'd anticipated. My parents weren't just stealing from me, they were actively targeting my clients. I couldn't allow that to continue, not for a single day longer than necessary to build my case. That night, after everyone had left, I sat at my computer reviewing the evening's security footage. I watched my parents working the room, identifying targets, gathering information. I compiled it all into a secure file labeled Client Protection. Then I picked up the business card Heather had given me and dialed the number. Agent Dennison, this is Darcy Mitchell, I said when a man answered. I believe we have a mutual interest in my parents' financial activities, and I have information you're going to want to see. A week after my meeting with Heather and my call to Agent Dennison, the situation at home escalated dramatically. I was preparing Lily's lunch for school when I overheard my mother's voice from my daughter's bedroom. You know, Lily, she was saying in that sickly sweet tone she used for manipulation, it's sad your mommy doesn't really love you the way a real mother should. I froze lunchbox in hand. My mommy does love me. Lily's small voice replied, though she sounded uncertain. Well, if she did, she wouldn't work so much, would she? She'd be home with you instead of leaving you with babysitters. When your Aunt Heather was little, I never left her with strangers. My hands shook with rage as I set down the lunchbox and moved silently toward Lily's room. And she wouldn't keep you away from your daddy. Parents who really love their children want them to have a mommy and daddy together. I reached the doorway just as Lily's eyes filled with tears. Is that why Daddy left? Because Mommy doesn't love us enough. That was it. I stepped into the room, my voice deadly calm. Lily, sweetheart, it's time for school. Go grab your backpack, please. My mother had the audacity to look innocent. We were just having a little girl talk, weren't we, Lily? Once Lily was out of earshot, I turned to my mother. Don't ever speak to my daughter about her father or my parenting again. Ever. She placed a hand on her chest in mock offense. I'm just trying to help. The child needs a proper family structure. Have you even considered reconciling with Jackson for Lily's sake? The mention of my ex-husband set off warning bells. Had they contacted him, I wouldn't put it past them. That afternoon, my suspicions were confirmed when Jackson called his voice hostile. Your mother tells me Lily's having nightmares and acting out at school. She says you're working too much and leaving her with strangers. My mother has no right to discuss our daughter with you, I replied, struggling to keep my tone even. And she's lying. Lily is fine. That's not what her teacher says. I got a call today about disturbing drawings Lily made. Something about scary grandparents hurting her mom. My heart sank. I hadn't known Lily had been drawing these things at school, though it made sense given what she'd witnessed. Maybe it's time we revisit the custody arrangement, Jackson continued. Your parents think Lily would be better off spending more time with me. My parents, I echoed, anger building. Since when do you consult my parents about our daughter? Since they reached out with concerns about your stability. They mentioned the scene you caused at dinner last week, how you're becoming erratic and volatile. I closed my eyes, realizing the depth of their manipulation. They were systematically undermining me on all fronts with my daughter, my ex-husband, even at work. This wasn't just about money anymore. They were trying to take Lily. Later that week, the school counselor requested a meeting. Miss Jenkins showed me several of Lily's recent drawings, dark scribbles of angry faces, a smaller figure hiding, and what appeared to be red splashes around a figure labeled Mommy. Lily says her grandparents yell a lot, Miss Jenkins explained gently. And she mentioned seeing her grandmother hurt you. Is there something going on at home that we should know about, Miss Adams? I took a deep breath and decided to be honest. My parents are staying with us temporarily. They have been verbally abusive, and there was an incident where my mother struck me. Lily witnessed it, and I've been working with a family therapist to help her process what happened. This wasn't entirely true yet, but it would be by the end of the day. I'd already scheduled an appointment with a child psychologist specialized in family trauma. Has Lily mentioned anything else that concerns you? I asked. Miss Jenkins hesitated. She said her grandparents told her she might go live with her daddy soon, and that you wouldn't be coming with her. Ice formed in my veins. They were laying groundwork to separate me from my daughter. This wasn't just financial predation, this was an attempt to steal my child. That evening I checked the hidden camera feeds while my parents were out. What I saw confirmed my worst fears. They were in my home office, systematically photographing client files, copying information from my computer, and most disturbingly accessing my personal files. I zoomed in on what they were reading: custody documents from my divorce, Lily's medical records, and information about my life insurance policy. A substantial one I'd taken out with Lily as the beneficiary, with my sister as the trustee in case anything happened to me. My phone pinged with an alert. Someone was accessing my client database using my credentials. Trevor's text came seconds later. Another attempt from your home IP address. Flagged and logged. The next morning I went to check on something in the guest house while my parents were at breakfast. In their bedroom I found a folder hidden between the mattress and box spring, a location they'd always used for hiding important documents when I was growing up. Inside were printouts about grandparents' rights laws in our state, highlighted sections on circumstances where grandparents could petition for custody, and most chillingly, a draft of a formal complaint alleging I was an unfit mother. They'd listed fabricated incidents of neglect claims about mental instability and allegations that I was misusing funds meant for Lily's care. There were also forged documents ready to be filed, claiming they'd been Lily's primary caregivers for months due to my inability to function. They'd even drafted a statement they intended to have Jackson sign supporting their petition for custody. I photographed everything and carefully returned the folder to its hiding place. Then I sat on the edge of their bed, the reality of their intentions hitting me full force. This wasn't just about exploiting me financially. They wanted Lily, my innocent 6-year-old daughter, as a pawn in their schemes. With custody, they would have access to her trust fund, her future inheritance, and could use her as leverage against me indefinitely. This was the final straw. I'd been methodically building my case, planning to spring my trap when all the evidence was in place. But I couldn't risk Lily's safety or psychological well-being any longer. It was time to accelerate the endgame. I called my attorney Lauren immediately. They're planning to file for custody, I told her, my voice steady despite my internal panic. I need to move now. We have enough, she assured me. The financial fraud, the assault, the documented pattern of abuse, it's solid. And with the custody scheme documented, no judge would look favorably on them. What about Lily? Will she have to testify? No, Lauren said firmly. The recordings and documentation are sufficient, and the child psychologist's report will carry significant weight without putting Lily through more trauma. I hung up and made one more call to Detective Marcus, the local contact Agent Dennison had connected me with. The police were already investigating my parents for previous fraud cases, and my evidence had strengthened their position considerably. "We're ready when you are," Detective Marcus confirmed. "Just give us the word and we'll execute the warrants." Tomorrow, I decided. I need one more night to ensure everything is in place. That evening, I served my parents their favorite meal, acting subdued and compliant. They interpreted my behavior as submission, believing their campaign to break me was succeeding. "Have you thought more about what we discussed?" my father asked, cutting into his steak. "About Lily spending more time with Jackson?" "I have," I said, eyes downcast. "You might be right. Maybe I am working too much." My mother nodded smugly. "It's for the best, dear. And we'll be there to help, of course. Between Jackson's place and ours, Lily will have proper stability." "Yours?" I asked, feigning confusion. "But you're staying here because you lost your house." They exchanged quick glances. "Well, we've been looking at some options," my father said carefully. "Maybe a nice little place near Jackson's. For Lily's sake." I nodded as if this made perfect sense while mentally adding this conversation to the mountain of evidence. They weren't even trying to hide their intentions anymore, so confident were they in their control over me. After dinner, I went to Lily's room to tuck her in. As I read her favorite story, I made a silent promise that tomorrow would be the last day she'd ever have to fear her grandparents. The last day any of us would live under their shadow. "Mommy loves you more than anything in the whole world," I told her, kissing her forehead. "And I will always, always protect you." She looked up at me with complete trust. "I know, Mommy. That's why you're the strongest person ever." Her words nearly broke me. In her eyes, despite everything she'd witnessed, I was still strong, still her protector. Tomorrow, I would prove her right. The next morning dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside my home. I'd spent most of the night finalizing preparations with my team of allies, Lauren, my attorney Trevor from work, Detective Marcus and Agent Dennison from the federal investigation. Everything was in place. I made breakfast as usual, the epitome of domestic submission. My parents came in from the guest house looking particularly pleased with themselves. "We've been thinking," my mother announced, helping herself to coffee. "It might be good for us to take Lily for the weekend. Just the three of us. A little grandparent bonding time." I kept my expression neutral while rage boiled beneath the surface. "This weekend, where would you go?" "We thought we might drive up to the lake house," my father said casually. The lake house that supposedly didn't exist because they were broke? The lake house they'd never mentioned to me until this moment? "That sounds nice," I said, placing pancakes on their plates. "I didn't know you still had the lake house." Another exchanged glance. "Well, it's not exactly ours," my mother backpedaled. "It belongs to a friend who lets us use it occasionally." "I see. Well, let me check my calendar. Lily might have a playdate this weekend." My mother's smile tightened. "Family should come before playdates, Darcy. You need to teach her proper priorities." The irony nearly made me laugh. Instead, I nodded meekly and continued serving breakfast. Later that morning, I set the next phase of my plan in motion. I invited my parents into my home office, an unusual move that immediately piqued their interest. "I've been thinking about what you said," I told them, pulling out a folder of documents, "about family priorities and financial responsibility." They leaned forward eagerly as I spread papers across my desk. "These are documents for a special investment opportunity available only to my top clients," I explained. "It's a limited real estate development with guaranteed returns of 18% in the first year." My father's eyes gleamed with greed. "And you're letting us in on this?" I nodded. "Family first, right? I thought it might help you get back on your feet. There are only 4 spots left, and I've reserved one for you." "That's very thoughtful, darling," my mother said, already scanning the falsified prospectus I'd created with Trevor's help. The opportunity didn't exist, but it contained all the right buzzwords to appeal to greedy investors: exclusive access, guaranteed returns, limited availability. "I'll need to verify some financial information first," I said, sliding across forms requiring detailed disclosures of assets and accounts. "Standard procedure." They hesitated briefly then. My father shrugged. "Of course. We'll fill these out right away." "Great. And I've transferred the $25,000 for Heather's treatment as you asked. This was true, except the money had gone directly to the facility, not to them as they'd wanted. I've also prepared a document giving you limited power of attorney to help manage some of my smaller accounts, since you both have such extensive financial experience. Their eyes lit up at this unexpected victory. They thought I was finally giving them access to my client funds. That's very wise, my father said, barely containing his excitement. We're happy to help lighten your workload. I smiled. Family helps family, right? That evening we had dinner together as usual. Lily was quieter than normal, pushing food around her plate and casting wary glances at her grandparents. My mother had been especially critical of her all day, commenting on everything from her clothes to her table manners. Sit up straight, Lily, she snapped. No wonder your mother can't control you. No discipline. I saw Lily's small shoulders hunch, her eyes filling with tears. Then she looked at me and whispered butterscotch. Our code word. My heart broke and simultaneously strengthened with resolve. This ended now. Lily, sweetheart, why don't you go play in your room for a bit? I suggested gently. I'll bring you dessert later. Once she was gone, I turned to my parents. She seems upset. Did something happen today? She's manipulating you, my father said dismissively. Children need firm boundaries. You coddle her too much. Like we coddled you, my mother added with a harsh laugh. And look how you turned out. Ungrateful, selfish. Is that why you're trying to take her away from me? I asked quietly. The room went silent. My parents stared at me, calculating their response. What are you talking about? My mother finally said. The custody documents. The petition for grandparents' rights. The plans to claim I'm an unfit mother. I leaned forward. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? My father recovered first, his expression hardening. You're proving our point. You're emotionally unstable, paranoid. Am I? I countered, pulling out my phone and playing a recording of them discussing their custody plans. Their faces paled as their own voices filled the room. Where did you get that? My father demanded. I have everything, I said, calmly. The financial fraud, the theft from my accounts, the attempts to access my client information, the assault, everything. My mother's shock quickly morphed into calculated sympathy. Darcy, sweetheart, you're not well. We've only been trying to help you. If you're recording conversations and spying on us, that just proves you need intervention. Save it, I replied. The police have seen the evidence. So has my attorney. And Heather. At the mention of my sister, they both stiffened. Heather wouldn't turn against us. My father insisted, though uncertainty flashed in his eyes. She already has. She's been cooperating with the insurance fraud investigation for months. My mother's facade finally cracked. You ungrateful, worthless little bitch, she hissed, her true nature emerging. After everything we've done for you. What exactly have you done for me? I asked, my voice steady. Stolen. My college fund used me as an ATM for Heather. Abused me my entire life. Or is it the recent assault and attempt to steal my child that I should be grateful for? We never wanted you in the first place, my mother spat, decades of resentment pouring out. You were an accident. A mistake. Heather was our planned child. Our real daughter. You were just a burden we got stuck with. Though her words stung, they weren't a surprise. On some level, I'd always known. We raised you, fed you, clothed you, my father added angrily. And this is how you repay us. You were supposed to be our retirement plan. Your success was our investment. So, this was always the plan, I asked. Move in, gather information, steal from me. Then take Lily to maintain control. You make it sound so calculated. My mother scoffed. We're just doing what parents have always done, ensuring our future. Children are supposed to take care of their parents. It's your duty. I shook my head slowly. No. Parents are supposed to raise children who can live independently, not serve as their personal ATMs. And they certainly don't try to steal their grandchildren as leverage. Enough talking, my father snapped, standing abruptly. You'll sign those power of attorney documents tonight, or we'll file the custody petition tomorrow morning. Your choice. I let my shoulders slump, allowing tears to fill my eyes. I'd become an expert at appearing broken when necessary. Fine. You win. I'll sign whatever you want. Just don't take Lily. They exchanged triumphant glances, believing they'd finally broken me completely. I knew you'd see reason, my mother said, smugly. Family first, after all. Yes, I whispered. Family first. I went to my office and returned with the power of attorney documents, signing them with a shaking hand as my parents watched greedily. What they didn't know was that these documents were meaningless, legally invalid forms created specifically for this moment. There, I said, sliding the papers across the table. You have what you wanted. My father gathered the documents with a satisfied nod. You've made the right decision, Darcy. Now things can get back to normal. Normal, I echoed hollowly. Yes. That night after my parents retired to the guest house with their victory, I went to Lily's room. She was still awake, clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit. Are the scary grandparents going away soon? She whispered as I sat on the edge of her bed. Yes, sweetheart. I promised, stroking her hair. Very soon. Tomorrow is going to be different, but I need you to be brave for me. Can you do that? She nodded solemnly. I can be brave like you, Mommy. I kissed her forehead, my resolve solidifying. Then get some sleep. Tomorrow is a big day. After she fell asleep, I sent a series of text messages to my team. Everything was set for the morning. As I prepared for bed, I noticed my parents had left their cell phones charging in the kitchen, an unexpected gift. I quickly installed mirroring software that would allow Detective Marcus to monitor their communications. Then I went to bed, sleeping peacefully for the first time in months. Tomorrow, justice would finally arrive. I woke before sunrise, a sense of calm purpose flowing through me. Today was the day everything would change. I prepared breakfast with care, my parents' favorite French toast with fresh berries and whipped cream. I set the table, beautifully added fresh flowers, and even put on the pearl necklace my mother always criticized as trying too hard. When they entered from the guest house, I greeted them with a warm smile. Good morning, I thought we'd have a special breakfast today. My father eyed me suspiciously. What's the occasion? New beginnings, I said brightly. You were right. Fighting against family is exhausting. I've decided to embrace my responsibilities. They relaxed, visibly interpreting my demeanor as complete surrender. My mother even patted my hand condescendingly as she sat down. We knew you'd come around eventually, she said. You always do. While we ate, my parents grew increasingly animated, discussing their plans now that they had access to my accounts and client information. We should call Heather, my father suggested. Let her know about the new arrangement. Great idea, I agreed. She should be part of this family reunion. My mother used my landline to call Heather at the treatment center, putting it on speakerphone. Heather, darling, we have wonderful news, she gushed. Darcy has finally seen reason. She's given us access to manage her finances, and will be helping with Lily's care. We're thinking you could leave that dreary place and move in with us. Darcy will cover all the expenses, of course. I watched their faces as silence stretched from the other end of the line. Heather, my father prompted. Are you there? I'm here. Heather's voice finally came through, cold and clear. And I'm not moving anywhere near you two ever again. My parents froze in confusion. This wasn't the compliant daughter they expected. What nonsense is this? My mother demanded. Of course you're coming home. We've arranged everything. No, Heather replied firmly. I've arranged everything with the federal investigators building a case against you. Did you really think I didn't know what you've been doing all these years? The fraud, the theft, the abuse. My parents' faces drained of color as they stared at the phone, then at me. I smiled pleasantly and continued eating my French toast. What have you done? My father whispered harshly. Me, I asked innocently. I'm just having breakfast with my family. My mother lunged across the table and grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. You little snake, after everything we've done for you. You might want to let go, I suggested calmly. That's assault and it's being recorded. Again. She released me as if burned, looking frantically around the room. Excuse me for a moment, I said, standing up. I need to get some paperwork from my office. Please continue enjoying breakfast. In my office, I sent a pre-arranged text. Now. When I returned to the dining room, my parents were hurriedly gathering their belongings and phones. Leaving so soon, I asked. But you haven't had dessert. This isn't over, my father threatened, pointing a finger in my face. We'll destroy you. We'll tell everyone what an unstable, ungrateful daughter you are. We'll get custody of Lily. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Actually, I know exactly who I'm dealing with, I replied, glancing at my watch. And in approximately 30 seconds, so will the authorities. As if on cue, there was a firm knock at the door. My parents froze as I went to answer it. Detective Marcus stood on my porch, flanked by 2 officers and Agent Dennison. Behind them, Lauren and Trevor waited by their cars. Perfect timing, I said, stepping aside to let them in. They were just leaving. My parents' faces contorted with rage and fear as Detective Marcus entered. Scott and Brenda Adams, he asked formally. I have warrants for your arrest on multiple charges, including fraud, elder abuse, assault identity theft, and attempted custodial interference. My father made a break for the back door, but found another officer waiting there. My mother simply collapsed into a chair, her face a mask of disbelief. This is ridiculous, she sputtered. We've done nothing wrong. Darcy is mentally unstable. She's been recording us without consent, making up stories. Actually, Agent Dennison interrupted. We have evidence dating back nearly 20 years. Miss Adams has merely provided the final pieces of a very large puzzle we've been assembling for quite some time. As the officers handcuffed my parents, my mother made one last desperate attempt. The recordings won't be admissible. She didn't have our consent. Lauren stepped forward. Actually, she did. The guest house agreement you signed included consent to security monitoring. And in this state, only one-party consent is needed for recording conversations when there's reasonable suspicion of criminal activity. We have more than enough admissible evidence. My father turned to me, his face twisted with hatred. We should have gotten rid of you when we had the chance. Detective Marcus tightened the handcuffs. That'll be enough of that, sir. My mother began sobbing dramatically. My own daughter, my own flesh and blood, betraying me like this. I stood calmly as they were let out, watching the people who had terrorized me for 35 years finally face consequences for their actions. As they approached the police cars, my father suddenly lunged toward his own vehicle, parked in my driveway. I have important medication in my car. I need to get it before you take me in. Nice try, I said. But I disabled your car last night. Just like you taught me when I was 16, disconnect the spark plug wires. His face registered shock that I'd remembered this detail from one of his many schemes. Once they were secured in separate police cars, Detective Marcus turned to me. We'll need you to come down to the station to give a formal statement. Of course, I agreed. But I need to arrange care for my daughter first. Trevor stepped forward. I'll stay with Lily until you get back. Take all the time you need. As the police cars pulled away, I felt a weight lifting. 35 years of fear, obligation, and manipulation finally ending. I'd not only escaped their control, but had systematically dismantled their ability to hurt anyone else. Lauren squeezed my shoulder. The judge already approved the temporary restraining order. They can't contact you or Lily, and they'll be held without bail given the flight risk and the federal charges. What happens now? I asked. Now, she said with a satisfied smile, we build the strongest case possible to make sure they never hurt anyone again. Inside, I found Lily sitting on the stairs, her eyes wide. She must have heard everything. Are the scary grandparents gone forever? She asked. I knelt before her, taking her small hands in mine. Yes, sweetheart. They won't be coming back. Ever. She threw her arms around my neck. Good. Because they made you sad, and nobody should make my mommy sad. I held her tightly, marveling at her resilience and wisdom. In that moment, I knew we would both be okay. The cycle of abuse that had defined my childhood would not touch her. I had broken the chain, not just for myself, but for all the generations to come. 6 months later, I sat in the courtroom as the judge delivered the sentences for my parents. The trial had been relatively short given the mountain of evidence against them and their previous record of similar schemes that investigators had uncovered. Scott and Brenda Adams, Judge Harrington began his voice. Stern, this court finds you guilty on all counts of fraud, elder abuse, assault identity theft, and attempted custodial interference. The systematic nature of your crimes spanning decades and targeting vulnerable individuals, including your own children, demonstrates a disturbing pattern of predatory behavior. My mother sobbed theatrically, while my father stared straight ahead, his face impassive. You are hereby sentenced to 12 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for at least 8 years. Additionally, you are ordered to make full restitution to all victims, including the $50,000 stolen from your daughter's trust fund with interest. As the judge continued listing the financial penalties and restrictions that would follow their eventual release, I felt no joy, no triumph, only relief that they could no longer hurt anyone else. Beside me sat Heather, our newfound sisterhood, still fragile but growing stronger. She had been instrumental in the case, providing testimony about decades of manipulation and fraud. "Are you okay?" she whispered as our parents were led away. "I am," I replied, surprised to find it was true. "For the first time in my life, I really am." Outside, the courthouse reporters waited for statements. I had declined all interviews until the trial concluded, protecting Lily from unnecessary exposure. Now, I decided to speak briefly. "Today isn't about revenge," I told the small crowd. "It's about accountability and protection. No child should endure abuse, and no adult should carry that burden alone. If my story helps even one person recognize and escape a similar situation, then something positive has come from this pain." In the months following my parents' arrest, I had established the Adams Recovery Foundation, dedicated to helping survivors of family abuse rebuild their lives. Using a portion of the recovered funds and settlements from my parents' estate, we provided legal assistance, therapy, and housing support to those escaping abusive family situations. Heather had become the foundation's outreach coordinator, using her own experiences to connect with others in recovery. Our relationship, manipulated by our parents into rivalry for so long, had transformed into a genuine partnership. At home, Lily flourished in the absence of her grandparents' toxic influence. She attended weekly sessions with Dr. Martinez, a child psychologist specializing in family trauma, who helped her process what she had witnessed. "Lily is remarkably resilient," Dr. Martinez told me during our monthly update. "The drawings she's making now show a strong maternal figure, you protecting her from harm. That's a very healthy narrative for a child who witnessed trauma." She showed me Lily's recent artwork, a colorful image of a woman with a cape standing tall with a smaller caped figure beside her. "Strong mommy and strong Lily," the childish handwriting proclaimed. My professional life had also transformed. After the case made local headlines, several of my clients expressed concern about the attempted infiltration of their accounts. "We need to know our financial advisor has integrity," Eleanor Thompson had said bluntly during our first meeting after the arrests. "And you, my dear, have demonstrated that in spades." Rather than losing clients, my practice grew as people sought an advisor they knew would protect their interests at all costs. Trevor had become a full partner in the firm, his loyalty during the ordeal cementing our professional trust. One evening, as Lily and I prepared dinner in our now peaceful kitchen, the doorbell rang. It was Detective Marcus stopping by with an update. "Thought you'd want to know," he said, accepting the coffee I offered. "We've identified 3 more elderly victims of your parents' schemes in Florida. The prosecutor is adding charges, which means they'll likely never see freedom again." "What about their hidden assets?" I asked. "Any luck tracking those down?" He smiled. "That's actually why I came by. The offshore accounts have been located and frozen. The court has ruled that those funds should be distributed to victims as restitution. As the longest-standing victim with documented losses, you're entitled to a significant portion." I shook my head. "Direct my share to the foundation. I don't want their money. I just wanted to stop them from hurting anyone else." After he left, Heather called with news of her own. "I've been offered a position with the National Center for Victims of Financial Crimes," she said excitedly. "They want me to help develop programs specifically for family financial abuse cases." "That's perfect for you," I told her sincerely. "No one understands the psychology better." "I couldn't have done it without you," she said, her voice softening. "You could have just cut me off with them, but you didn't. You saw me as another victim, not an accomplice." "Because that's what you were," I replied. "We both were. They raised us to play the roles they assigned, me as the provider, you as the distraction. Breaking free of those roles is how we truly defeat their influence." The greatest surprise came from my ex-husband, Jackson. After learning the full truth about my parents' manipulation, including their attempts to use him in their custody scheme, he had approached me with genuine remorse. "They told me you were having breakdowns," he admitted during a co-parenting meeting. "Said Lily was in danger. I should have talked to you directly instead of believing them. Our relationship had gradually improved, evolving into a respectful partnership focused on Lily's well-being. He had even contributed to the Foundation's legal defense fund for parents fighting abusive custody battles. As summer turned to fall, Lily and I established new family traditions untainted by the manipulation and fear that had characterized my childhood. We baked cookies together on Sunday afternoons. We had picnics in the park where we read books aloud. We created artwork that covered our refrigerator with color and joy. One evening, as I tucked her into bed, Lily asked a question that caught me off guard. "Mommy, why were Grandma and Grandpa so mean?" I sat on the edge of her bed, considering how to answer truthfully yet appropriately for a 6-year-old. "Some people never learn how to love properly," I finally said. "They think love means controlling others or taking from them. But that's not real love at all. Like when Tommy on the playground says, he'll only be my friend if I give him my cookies?" I smiled at her perfect analogy. Exactly like that. Real love gives without expecting anything back. It helps you grow stronger, not weaker. She nodded thoughtfully. "I think you're the best at real love, Mommy." That night, as I sat on my porch watching the sunset, I reflected on the journey that had brought me to this moment of peace. The 35 years of abuse had not defined me. They had merely prepared me to recognize and fight injustice. My parents had unwittingly created their own downfall by raising a daughter who eventually became strong enough to stand against them. I had not only survived their abuse, but had transformed that experience into something positive: protection for Lily, redemption for Heather, and support for countless others facing similar battles through the Foundation's work. The final piece of evidence against my parents had been perhaps the most shocking to those in the courtroom, though not to me. Records revealed I had begun documenting their abuse and fraud not just 3 months before the assault, but 15 years earlier, shortly after escaping their home. Every transaction, every manipulation, every lie, all meticulously recorded and preserved. "You knew," Heather had asked when this was revealed. "All those years you knew what they were doing, and you were building a case." "I knew who they were," I had replied simply. "And I knew someday they would come for me again. I just had to be ready when they did." Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is protect yourself from the people who are supposed to love you. And sometimes justice is a dish best served not cold, but precisely when it will do the most good for the most people. As the last light faded from the sky, I made a silent promise to myself and to Lily. The legacy of our family would no longer be one of abuse and control, but of strength, integrity, and genuine love. The cycle was broken not just for us, but forever. What would you do if someone who was supposed to love you betrayed your trust? Would you confront them immediately or plan a strategic response? Have you ever had to make the difficult choice to distance yourself from toxic family members for your own well-being? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share to help others who might be facing similar struggles. Thank you for listening, and remember, your worth is never determined by those who fail to see it.